right, so in this week's guitar lesson, we're going to be talking about harmonies and how you can integrate them into your playing in real time when you're improvising. And this is one of those things that took me years to figure out, but once I realized it, it's like the most obvious thing. It really all comes from chord shapes that you already know, just isolating certain notes from those chord shapes, playing those notes together. When you have two notes together that are played like that, one is harmonizing with the other. And so you can integrate this stuff into your playing. So everything that I just played was a combination of harmonies like that mixed with the major scale. There wasn't anything clever. It's a real basic jam track, 3 chords. It's a 1-4-5. But it's my job to come up with something interesting, and so that's what I try to do. So we're going to talk about all of that over the course of 2 videos. In this video, we're going to go through the first half of everything. If you'd like to watch the second half of the solo, download the tablature, download the MP3 jam tracks so that you can practice it all. You can get those things by going to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP532. Okay, so this song is played in B flat. Now, normally I'm playing in A or E or some of the more basic keys, but I wanted to do something that was all closed position. There's no open strings in this, so that you can take all of these ideas and move them up or down the neck and translate and play in any key. But B flat's just a nice key. It's in a lot of jazz standards and that kind of thing. So the 3 chords we're going to be playing over are B flat, that's your 1 chord, E flat, which is your 4 chord, and then F7, which is your 5 chord. So B flat, E flat, and F are your 3 chords. And since this song is just 3 chords, a 1-4-5 chord progression, you have to play something interesting. And to me, these harmonies are kind of where it's at. They can really, especially when it's slow and kind of melodic like this, it can make your playing sound a little more advanced, as opposed to if I had just played the pentatonic scale, for example, like the major pentatonic scale. I could do that, and I could make it sound pretty and make it fit in, but it doesn't have a certain level of sophistication that like a harmony does, because the harmony is really pinpointing the notes of the chords as they pass by. Let's listen to the first phrase, and then we'll break it down. Okay, so I started with this. Let's look at this. I'm starting with a harmonized third, and what that means is there's 3 intervals between these 2 notes. That's all that the third part means. But I'm playing these 2 notes, but I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about my B flat chord. Remember, we're playing in the key of B flat. That's our 1 chord. So I was thinking about that chord, and if I were to play that chord and do the bar there, that's where you're barring on the 6th fret, and these 3 fingers are making up the E shape from the, so we're thinking cage system, first position E chord, if I were to capo with my finger up here. Now, if I were to be playing that chord and I played strings 2 and 3, these are the notes I'd be playing. So that's where, when I started this harmony, that's where that came from. It's coming right out of this chord shape. Or you can think of the triad, the top part of the chord. But I slid into it. So here's your first takeaway. Think about your E chord shape. Think about strings 2 and 3 and slide into it. It doesn't seem like much, or it doesn't sound like much, but it actually is a very effective, very pretty sound. And if you wanted a more full sound, more rich sound, you could play strings 1 and 3 instead of 2 and 3 out of that same chord shape. That's a harmonized 6th, which means there's 6 intervals apart. And those intervals are coming from the major scale. So it's 6 intervals in the major scale apart. Okay, so I started with this. Now the next thing I played was this. So that's strings 2 and 3 from the 8th fret. And the reason that those notes are being played is because they're coming out of the 4 chord. So one of the things I talk about a lot is when you're hanging out on a chord for a while, it's something I learned from gospel piano, but what will happen is you'll play the 1 chord to the 4 chord, back to the 1 chord like this. You can just kind of pivot back and forth between those 2 chords. So when I played this, I'm basically doing that. I'm playing the 1 chord to the 4 chord. It's just a little harmony of it, but that's all you need. And then the next thing was strings 1 and 2 up here. And you know where that comes from, right? So that's coming from this same chord shape. the E shape. It's just now we're on strings 1 and 2. So you can start to see how simple this is. It's just taking the notes out of the chord, and instead of playing all, 6 strings or 3 strings from a triad or whatever, you're just playing 2. That's the 1, the root and the 5th. Now the next thing I played was up here. I played strings 1 and 2 on the 8th fret, and then I came up to this triad up here. Now this, that's kind of just a passing note. I don't want to spend too much time on what that is, but I think of that as like your 2 chord, which would be a minor chord. So there's your 1 chord, there's a 2 chord. But these harmonies are spelling out a melody. If you listen for it, you'll hear this. Very slow, very simple. Those are notes right out of your major scale. If you harmonize them, it sounds like that. Very pretty and full. So once I came up to here, I'm playing a B triad, or B flat triad, sorry, not B, but B flat, using the D shape. So think of your D shape in first position. If you were to slide it all the way up here, where your middle finger and your index finger are on the 10th fret, strings 1 and 3, and then your ring finger's on the 11th fret, 2nd string, I'm playing a B flat chord. But when I play it up here, I'm using, there's 2 ways you can look at this. That's either the D shape, if we're thinking cage system, or it's the C shape. I'm gonna get it right. Because this triad lives inside of both of those. But that's the idea. So you have all right, so now the song goes to an E flat chord, and I played. Very simple, very basic, but what I was thinking about as I was playing that was my E flat chord right here using the A shape. Now this goes, again, back to the cage system, but if I think about, or if I picture that shape and look at strings 2 and 3, that's where they're coming from, right? So that's, and remember, we just did that for the 4 chord as we played from the first phrase, but what I did was I held this note here, this 8th fret 2nd string, and then did this. That's a stretch there. You can do it with your pinky. That's probably a smarter way to do it. But this is the 3rd interval, right? From your E flat chord. And then these notes are just walking down the major scale for the key of the song. So the song is in B flat, so this would be. So that's my B flat major scale. And I was just walking down the scale while holding the 3rd interval from that chord. Why did I do that? There's no science behind that. It just felt right. I could sort of hear that little walk down. Okay, so now the song goes to the F, which is our 5 chord. So if that's our E flat, you go up 2 frets, there's your F. I know the jam track I really played in F7, but we're gonna be thinking about this shape. This is gonna be our neighborhood, what we're gonna visualize. And so what I did was I stayed on strings 2 and 3 on the 8th fret. Now you might wanna try and just quiz yourself, maybe pause the video and try and understand, now why would that work if the chord was an F? Why would those 2 notes work? Like, why would it work to stay on those? And I'll assume you've paused and thought about that for a minute. But the reason for that, there's a couple of ways you can look at it. But what I think about is when I'm thinking about my F chord, if I look at just strings 1, 2, and 3 from these 2 frets, now I'm playing the F chord using the A shape, right? And so when I'm doing this, I have 1 finger on the 10th fret and 1 finger down here on the 8th fret. And if I look at strings 1, 2, and 3 on the 10th fret, I have this triad, and if I come down 2 frets, I have this triad. And when I play those with an F note, or with the F chord, I get an F6 chord, that minor triad. I realize it's a minor triad, but that is inside of a 6 chord. So that's an F6 and that's an F9. So it makes sense then, when the song goes to the F, for me to hang out on that. I'm really just playing two of the notes from the F9 from that triad. That's how I was thinking about it. Well, there's a lot of other ways we could dissect that and explain it, but that's what went on in my head. All right, so at this point in the song, the chord stays on this F chord for a while. And I'm going to be doing some things in this neighborhood. And these are all ideas I want you to walk away with. All of these little ideas, there's going to be a few of them. So let's get our bearings so we're all on the same page. We're thinking about the F chord using the A shape, right? And we just talked about this and how that's coming out of like a 9 chord. But then the next thing I played was this. So I kept that bar on the 8th fret, strings 2 and 3. And then I added my ring finger up here on the 10th fret 2nd string. And then I went like this. Let's look at this. So it starts, let me show you how to play it first and I'll explain it. So I'm going to bar the first 2 strings on the 10th fret. Now remember, think about your chord shape, that A shape. Remember I had a finger up here on the 10th fret. I just replaced it with my index finger. And I did a hammer on. So I'm playing strings 1 and 2 on that 10th fret. I do a hammer on to the 11th fret 2nd string. And then take that off. And then I come back down to the 8th fret. Again, it's in that chord shape. And then I went... So I did strings 1 and 2 again. This time it's a bar on the 8th fret and then a hammer onto the 10th fret 2nd string. And then I do this pull off between the 9th fret 2nd string and the 8th fret. Like that. So it's... So that last note there was the 10th fret 3rd string. So it goes... Now, what I did was I kept my fingers in that position. So I'm barring the first 2 strings on the 8th fret. I've got my ring finger on the 10th fret, 3rd string, and I'm going to hold those notes, and you'll see why as we get into this last little part here. So again, pay attention to the shape that we're in. We're playing the F chord out of this A shape, and I've got my fingers in position here. And then this next little lick is going to go. So what I'm going to do is most of those notes I'm going to be playing with my pinky. I'm going to leave these other fingers in place, and I'm going to play 3, 2, 1. And actually, when I play the first string, I'm going to put my pinky down on the 11th fret 1st string. Then slide it down to the 10th fret. And then take it off so that I've got my 8th fret 1st string behind that bar there. So you have... And then the pinky goes down on the 11th fret 2nd string. And I do a hammer on now. This is one we've already done between the 8th fret and the 10th fret on the 2nd string, but I'm barring and I'm playing strings 1 and 2. There's that pull off again between the 9th fret and the 8th fret on the 2nd string. So we have... We're back down to here, and now we're going to play strings 2 and 3, which is out of the 4 chord, remember? And then we're going to go back to strings 2 and 3 down here, which is out of our B chord. But now here's the thing. This is what I want you to get out of this. So all of that I was playing, that little melody line, those notes were out of your B flat major scale. And I want you to look at your F chord, using the A shape there, and look at how symmetrical this little pattern is. I've done other lessons on this, and this is going to totally ring a bell to some of you if you follow my videos, but it's going to look at the pattern here. 11, 10, 8. Do the same thing on the 2nd string. 11, 10, 8. And then we come down to the 3rd string and we play 10, 8, 7, and then we do 10, 8, 7. So we have... And those notes are out of your B flat major scale, but they're also the notes of your F mixolydian. So F mixolydian, think about it, we're playing over an F chord using the A shape. So for future reference, just file this away. If you want to get to mixolydian mode or that sound, find your A chord shape and then You've got that little pattern over it, and that's one way to do it. Now, I don't want to get any more into modes than that, but that's what's going on there. F mixolydian is the B flat major. They're the same thing, same notes. But the thing to really pay attention to, and the reason I've got these fingers down the whole time, is I want those notes to ring out. I want this to be really chiming. So even though I'm walking down the scale and I'm using my pinky to pretty much do it, I'm letting these notes ring out, especially this F note, since we're playing over the F chord there. And it just gives it a real pretty kind of dreamy, spacey sound. And then we come down to where we started, which is right out of that B flat chord here using the E shape. All right, well, I hope you've picked up a few ideas from the first half of this lesson. Even if it's just something simple, one little simple concept, one or two, it doesn't have to be the entire thing, but walk away with something, and something that you can apply to your playing going forward, and always try and kind of quiz yourself. That's how I learned this stuff. All right, we'll see you in part 2, where we'll go over the second half.